It's an enormous pleasure to be back on this stage. Despina Travalu, thank you so much for bringing BIMCO and me back to this great day of sharing insights among shipping professionals. I'm humbled by such a huge audience and meeting all of you great people here on year 2 of the BIMCO establishment of a permanent representative down here. Elena is here on table 9. So in case you have not met her already, I can only introduce you to her now. She is absolutely astonishing in taking care of BIMCO members' interest in the Greek region. I'm tasked with the challenge of sharing some insights into what the future of shipping may look like. This is Let's ReFuture Shipping. And I think the one thing that we need to ReFuture or rethink is not to continuously pass on all the benefits that we generate in the shipping industry to our clients just like that. That's the one thing we need to change, right? We cannot only rely on the asset play going forward, even though the very large crude carriers are up for sale at $106 million nowadays. Take the money and run. I think, as Danae just highlighted just before, it's been almost a decade since we've really seen a profitable industry, and we need to ReFuture that. I'll take you on a short journey, starting from more or less Wuhan nowadays to where we are going in not perhaps 5 or 10 years, but also as Martin opened up saying that when we're looking at 2050, the shipping industry may or may not be that different. Naturally, we're still going to supply the societies of the world in the massive population areas, predominantly in the Far East Asia, with a lot of goods they need. And they will, on their hand, deliver tons of stuff that we need also at the opposite side of the globe. In between, well, we are flying a lot of stuff around, but in between seaborne transportation. I told you we're going to start in Wuhan. We may be in Athens, Greece now, but it's absolutely sure that we have a crisis here. I've just seen a tweet from the World Health Organization gathering their executive committee today, getting their heads around this issue. Are we talking about a global crisis? Shipping is certainly going to be affected by this. Right now, we cannot really see to what extent. In all fairness, Chinese New Year is putting a normal seasonal dampening effect on the shipping industry. But just next week, we were also getting accustomed to Chinese merchants getting back into the market and supporting the shipping industry. I say this year it will be different. For how long and for how big a part of the world this will affect, I can only allow you and encourage you to stay on top of what kind of information we also deliver from BIMCO. We have issued already services to the shipping industry on this coronavirus on our website. And on that website, of course, you will also find insights on the shipping markets that me and my team covers. Dry bulk, tankers, and containers. Where are we on those 3 shipping markets right now? Let's start on the good page. Oil tankers. They are making money right now. Unfortunately, only half of what they did a month ago. Very much so in the crude oil tanker business. For 2020, at least in the BIMCO market analysis team, we believe that oil product tankers should be the better bet, simply due to the fact that demand is in a better position. Fleet growth has been coming down for quite some years now, and that stands in opposite to what goes on in crude oil right now. Markets may be high, but it's run on geopolitics. It's run on something completely different. It's run on US sanctions. It's run on trade war. It's run on something which is unsustainable in any way. Being in shipping, naturally, this is a moment of opportunities. But in all fairness, it is not sustainable in any way, right? We prosper when global trade prospers. And that brings me to another point. Anyone in here relies on trade to GDP multiplier being 2 or 3? I think there's been so many sayings in the industry around we can behave completely reckless, buying tons of new ships because the multiplier will always save our asses at the end of the day. It may or may never have been the truth. Going forward, we expect the multiplier, regardless of how you put it around, to be lower than in the past decade, and even lower in the previous decade of that. The noughties may be around 1.2 if you take total seaborne transportation set against economic growth. Past decades, around 1. Going forward, 0.8 perhaps, because the world is changing. Global economic growth is services. We buy cell phones, not grains, coals, or anything like that in huge amounts transported in massive cargo carriers. Dry bulk, how are they doing nowadays? As John just said, you need a scrubber-fitted capesize just to be able to cater for your operational expenditures. Absolutely unsustainable. It's been on a downward curve for a very long time. 2019 may be the story of the thing that couldn't fly. 2019 was actually not such a bad year for dry bulk. But if you look at the fundamentals where we try to put our feet into the ground, we were looking at fleet growth at 4% at face value and a demand approximately 1. Driven forward by extraordinary activities around the world, including the trade war, that in some way didn't do much positive to the shipping industry, but then again, I mean, you may be among those operators or owners that happen to be in the right place at the right time. I mean, it's extremely difficult really to position your ship for cargoes that are at the mercy of politics. How would you know where your cargoes are coming from? I mean, it makes a huge difference whether you're positioning yourself in the Northwest Pacific as opposed to East Coast South America, or West Coast South America for that matter. Those of you who have been reading into some of the takes from BIMCO Market Analysis know for sure that soybeans is, of course, one of the things that have been affecting the industry very much. That brings me to the point about trade war. Is that a good or bad thing for shipping? It's outright bad. It limits trade, and we feast on globalization. We cannot have mercantilism as it was done back in the medieval centuries. You cannot just do it like that. But then again, I'm absolutely sure that you are servants to whatever cargo that may come around. So this phase 1 trade deal, what does it bring around? I'm not really sure it brings around much positiveness, unless it really delivers on its numbers. At least if those values are translated into a lot of cargoes, that will be an upside. But if you look into those numbers and you look at how much stuff in terms of agricultural goods, in terms of manufactured goods, in terms of energy that is supposed to be shipped from the US into China, it's massive. But have you read the finer details of that phase 1 deal? There's a snapback in between the finer lines. And with the less than happy marriage between Presidents Xi and Trump. It's likely that this deal may not live as long as it was intended to. Presidents Xi and Trump tear down these tariff walls. We don't need them. IMO 2020, just making a bad day more difficult. Buying bunkers in Singapore, which is the world's largest bunkering hub, would set you back if you bought low sulfur fuel oils instead of heavy sulfur fuel oils, $350 a ton more at the start of January. That massive spread between the fuel that you could purchase if you have a scrubber on board and the fuel that you could purchase if you did not was $350 a metric ton. That's very much the difference between make or break. We have been quite outspoken in BIMCO about the significance of this and the significance of passing on these extra costs down the supply chain. That brings me back to my starting point, right? We need to bring profits back because otherwise we cannot even pay our fuel bills. We may have a fine bunker delivery note, but if we cannot pay it, it's really tricky. So we need to bring back profits into the freight market. Fortunately, bunker prices have come down somewhat. But going forward, there will still be a significant spread between heavy sulfur fuel oil and any low sulfur fuel that you may like to buy. In between, well, this is a shipping conference. I trust that everyone have their credit lines tight, or at least call their bankers more or less on a daily basis, because this is not going to go away. There will continue to be a spread going forward. I say it will be more of a wishful thinking scenario if you were to expect low sulfur fuels to be priced at parity with heavy sulfur fuel oils. A comment also on the market for heavy sulfur fuel oil going forward. I think it's fair to say that some are arguing that market is completely gone. I trust they did not invest in a scrubber. Going forward, we expect at least, a third to 40% of the market to be heavy sulfur fuel oil, and 60-something% will be of low sulfur fuels, because those scrubbers are fitted on the big gas guzzlers. Okay, so do not expect that market to evaporate. It still serves a purpose for the refinery industry to feed the residual fuel oil into the shipping industry. I'm not talking about the environment or anything right now, because this is a sulfur regulation. This is about taking sulfur from the great populated area into somewhere else. Okay, so that's what this is all about. It doesn't even take into consideration the greenhouse gas that is surely to become one of the big issues for the shipping industry going forward. We have seen some great insights into the potential scenarios that may or may not come around for the shipping industry if we are to bring the shipping industry down to 50% in 2050 and to zero in 2070. It's a tall task, but it relies on not just the shipping industry doing its job, it relies on the shipping industry doing their job as a part of the whole world's job. Because if the world is not going down the road of the Paris Agreement, shipping industry is just a servant. So if the world keep on burning coal, we will keep on transporting that coal. And putting things into perspective, I mean, it doesn't make a difference to the climate change or the climate challenge of the whole world if the shipping industry is the only party signing up or at least complying with the Paris Agreement. Bringing me back to my final conclusion, sharing insights on the challenges that face us today We at BIMCO try to do that at great extent at an event like this. And we can only encourage you to do the same. Because one thing that I would like to take away from a day like this is food for thoughts from fellow speakers up here and from meeting all of you for lunch and during the day. Because that, I think, is what we need to do. Sharing is caring. And then we need to bring profits back into the shipping market. On that happy note, I shall pass the word back to Yuri. Thank you so much for your kind attention. I look forward to talking to you shortly.